grading documents. Sometimes there's a case where the academic profile just like jumps off the screen. And then, you're reading the rest of the file with an excited attitude, understanding that like, gosh, this is probably going to be a student we're going to want to offer a space to. What else can I learn here? Sometimes you might start with the academics and think like, oh gosh, the grades really plummeted sophomore year. Now I know what to look for when I read the recommendations. I really want to look to see if there's an explanation or some contextual information that will help explain what happened sophomore year. And if not in the recommendations, maybe I can look for that in the essay. So it does, not always, but the academics, the transcript can provide you a little bit of a roadmap of what you are looking for throughout the rest of the application.
That makes so much sense. Yeah. Yep. Let me ask you this. I hear this often, and I think a lot of our parents, students hear this. The word holistic. So we always hear that colleges like to do a holistic review.
Yes.
Can you say a little bit about what that is, and is that true? And talk a little bit about that.
Now, if you ever hear me do a presentation and you hear me describe our process at Holy Cross, our process of reading applications as a holistic, I hope you'll laugh or raise your hand and say, "You said you would never say that." That's not because it's not true. And holistic just means everything is under consideration. And schools love to brag about that, and maybe my school does as well. I don't know what the alternative is. Maybe there's an alternative out there to holistic. I guess that's like maybe we'll read some stuff, maybe we won't. I don't know who's saying that. But I think what's worth understanding though about holistic review, which means everything is under consideration, that is often misconstrued to mean everything counts the same. That is not true. At most schools, the student's academic profile is the most important part of the application. And that would be the student's transcript, which includes school they've attended, courses they've signed up for, levels of courses, and grades earned. It might include standardized testing if that's included as well. That is the cake. One of my favorite metaphors, right? That the academic profile is the cake, and everything else is frosting. So, with that understanding, everything is under review. It's a holistic review, but that doesn't mean everything counts the same. And I think sometimes when families hear holistic, they think, well, okay, extracurriculars are just as important as academics, and that's not the case. Just because those are under review doesn't mean it's of equal importance.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever had a time when you were reading an application and in the middle of reading it, you said, "Oh, this student is definitely getting admitted"?
Um, yes, um, for sure, for sure. And when you work in the world of admissions, right, there's such a huge spectrum, right? There's open enrollment schools, and then at the other end, there's schools where seemingly no one gets in every year. And so, but it doesn't matter which of those schools you work at, you've certainly had that moment. Um, you haven't always been right. I mean, I've had that thought and certainly not been right at times. And that probably even happened today during my work day. And there are certainly times but that's I think the thing that we in the admissions world understand that the individual applicant doesn't is that it really, and hang with me, don't cut out after I say the first part of the statement. It really doesn't matter how strong of an applicant you are, comma. What matters is how your application compares to the rest of the pool at that school. That's what actually matters. So, like I say, there's plenty of times that when I read an application, be like, this kid's a star. We're definitely going to take this kid. Well, if I work at a school that can only offer 1,000 acceptances and I say that 2,000 times, clearly I've been wrong 50% of the time, because it's not the individual strength of the application that matters. It's how that application compares against the pool. And so that's why often, especially, I would say most especially in the selective world, you try not to think that way when reading an application. You try not to think about a decision because what really matters is how that application compares against the pool. And you're only looking at one application at a time. You really need to have gone through the pool to compare and contrast.
Yeah. Yep. On the sort of negative side, what are some red flags that you might see in an application?
You know, I mean, maybe you're like me, you get these not these emails, these like news articles in your feed that are like 5 deal breakers to look for in a relationship, or like three signs you should walk out of a used car dealership and never buy from them. Like, um, I don't know that there are like red flags. There are things that you see that may be A, out of profile for that student, or B, not going to compare favorably to the overall pool. But for those things, as I said, that's why we generally might start with the academics. And
Mm,
then if there are those red flags, like, gosh, grades plummeted sophomore year, or a bunch of course changes, classes being dropped a certain year, you'll want to look for an explanation. Was there a medical situation that year? Was there unrest at home? Was there X, Y, or Z? So I think red flags suggest like kind of, in the relationship terms, is deal breaker, right? Or but these are just things you notice that might be out of profile that you look to understand for context, and for an explanation. Frankly, you look for that explanation throughout the rest of the file.
yeah. Yep. That makes sense.
I hope you didn't read that as me avoiding your question.
No, no. Nope, you elaborated. You gave us great info. That's good. Let me ask you, let's talk about the recommendations. What can a recommendation add to the application? What can that do that the rest of the application maybe can't show you?
You know I love a good metaphor, Julie.
Ah, yes. Can't wait.
I I think of recommendations as the salt and pepper, right? It it's not there to create an image. It's not there to right, create values. It's there to sort of heighten and season and bring certain things to the forefront. Um, and it's the a good recommendation, and let me rephrase that, an effective recommendation um, is not akin to a well-written recommendation. It is not like come from someone who has a great turn of words, or some teacher who has to be alumni of the college you're applying to. What is most important is how well that recommender knows the applicant. That is the key. And I think sometimes students, the mistake we see is like, oh, I want that my English teacher to write me a recommendation because they're so good at writing. Okay, perhaps, but if the English teacher isn't the teacher who knows you the best, that's not going to be the best recommendation. Another example of that we often see is, gosh, my uncle is friends with the mayor of my town. Maybe I can get the mayor to write me a recommendation. That's never, the seeking the impressive resume of your recommender never really makes for a great recommendation because in all likelihood they just don't know the student very well. Sometimes the best sort of extra recommendation comes from the person who has, by some standards, the least impressive resume, right? It's the retired lady who lives around the corner for whom you do odd jobs from time to time. The next door neighbor for whom you babysit. Gosh, like you babysit for a neighbor, they're entrusting you with their kids. Like they've got some pretty great things to say about you. So um, the recommendations really can add seasoning, add flavor, bring things to the forefront, but only if the recommender knows the student well. Some of that is about who you ask to write recommendations, but also some of that is incumbent upon the student to allow potential recommenders to get to know them well, whether that's your teacher, your school counselor, an employer, or anybody like that. Sometimes you just need to make sure you've got people in your world who you've allowed to get to know you.
Yeah, very good advice. I know we also get a lot of questions about standardized tests. And let's say we know now that some colleges require them, some colleges are test optional. The questions I tend to get most recently are about colleges that are test optional. So students can make that choice, but I guess the way I'll ask the question is deep down, secretly, do admissions officers actually make judgments based on if someone submits a test score or not?
So there's a lot to dig in here, and it's a great question. It's a great way you ask the question. Um, if you do not submit testing with your application, the admissions reader will not guess at what your testing might be. We don't think about things we can't see. There's just no time to
Mhm.
sit back and wonder about rainbows and unicorns and sunny days. Um, if it's in front of you, you think about it. If it's not, you don't. That being said, and there are some schools where most of the students who apply don't submit testing, and they have a very level process, and the same makeup might be true in their incoming first year class. It might be mostly students who didn't submit testing and some who did. There are schools out there that are test optional who prefer testing. I'm not going to lie. And if you don't submit testing, they're not going to try to figure out what your scores are, but it just might be harder to get in without testing. Now, there's not a lot of those schools, um, but there are some. And if you're wondering who they are, the simple question is to ask of any admissions officer, what percentage of your freshman class submitted testing?
Okay.
Because if you asked at College of the Holy Cross, we would say like, oh, it was under 50%, always in the 50% area. And then you'd have a pretty good sense, like, okay, like about half the kids in the freshman class didn't submit testing. I have a friend who works at a school, and I did a program with him the other day, and he said 86% of our freshman class submitted testing.
Mm.
And they're a test optional school. So that tells you something about their pool and about how they're selecting from their pool. Now, if testing is not a strength for you, that doesn't mean you should apply to that school and send your testing in. It just means that you probably, if it's not a strength, don't send it, but it's pretty hard to get into that school without testing. I will say, though, that most schools who are test optional are authentically test optional and look at both kinds of applications similarly and have probably a composition of their first year class similar to what I represented at Holy Cross. And it's an easy follow-up question to ask to really kind of figure out like what your chances might be of applying without testing to that test optional school.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So ask that question and know that. How about the other piece that we get a lot of questions about is the essay. Do you have any examples of essays that were memorable for you and that made a difference that you think actually made a real difference in the student being admitted?
So um, essays are absolutely our favorite part of the application. Um, don't don't confuse that. Don't run into somebody tomorrow at the grocery store and say, the Holy Cross guy said the essay is the most important part. It is not the most important part. The academic profile is the most important part of the application. The essay is our favorite part. It is 650 words from a high school senior captured at a moment in time. It is a free topic. Some of them we read are awesome, and some of them we read are awful. Some of them are sad, some of them are silly, some of them are profound, and some of them are just fun. We get to sit back in our chair for about 2 minutes and enjoy the read. We are not English teachers who have to write up comments and give a grade and, give lots of feedback and circle the misplaced comma. We just get to sit back and then when we're finished reading it, write a few notes about what we thought of it. Um, there really is no good topic or bad topic. There's topics students really want to write about, and then there's everything else. Students always write the best essay on the topic that they want to write about. You're going to think this is a plant, but we didn't talk about this particular question beforehand. Right there. There's an essay I actually printed out because I wanted to read again. I read it the other day. What was so great about that? Authenticity and honesty. It was a student who sort of like really authentically talked about, to be specific, it was a student who comes from a family of faith, and he was a non-believer, and he just talked about like what that was like for him. That was all. It was authentic. It was just honest. We will generally get out of an essay exactly what students feel when writing the essay. I think most students feel bored when writing their essay. And if they're bored writing it, we will be bored reading it. So how you control that is choosing a topic that you feel something when writing, whether it's you feel fun or you feel meaning or you feel sad or you feel silly, whatever you feel, we will feel. So make sure you've got a topic where you do feel. In the end, when I talk to students, we talk about essays a lot, and then the last thing I say is, especially to seniors, it's not as important as you think it is. It just isn't. It is worthy of your best effort, partly because of the role it plays in the application, but also partly because it's just a moment in your time where you get to capture 650 words, and it will probably have more meaning to you down the road than it has to us as part of your application. So it's worthy of a great effort, but the world is filled with all these urban legends of like, oh, did you hear so-and-so who didn't get into blank just because of their essay? Or the opposite. I think maybe the opposite story. Oh, did you hear so-and-so got into that school only because of her essay? No, that didn't happen. That's not how admissions works. Like essays tend to just fit with the application. It's worthy of a great effort. It's worthy of our time to read. We love reading them, but it's not likely to make or break your chances.
Well, I think that's going to be news for a lot of people because that is another piece that people, I know students stress about.
Yeah. Well, and here's the, one of the problems is that students have spent their entire high school career writing essays for a very well-known audience. It's for their English teacher and their history teacher who they know, and they understand the expectations. And then they write this essay for an audience that they don't know, and they
Mm,
don't understand the expectations. They don't even understand the assignment. The topics are so confusing. And so it's that great unknown that creates so much unrest and anxiety, when I think if they really understood, like, we just want you to write on what you want to write and find something when writing it, and we will enjoy reading it, and it's unlikely to make or break your chances.
yeah, yeah.
Julie, if you were to write, if I were to say, I want you to write a 650 word essay today, topic of your choice.
You're right.
It's
That would
paralyzing,
like,
right?
oh, okay, what do I do? You're right.
And it kind of should be like everything about you, but also like, it's only 650 words. Like, it is
Yes,
paralyzing even for us as adults. So,
yes.
um, I get it. I totally get it.
Yep. Well, I love your answer. I think everyone else will too. This is kind of shifting gears, but can I ask the
Sure.
question of um, how much do institutional priorities affect admissions decisions?
They can a lot. They can a lot. And what Julie means by institutional
Yeah.
priorities is just like, um, the factors that a particular college or university needs to emphasize in a particular cycle. Um, Those can change from year to year and often do. It can be something as simple as like, I mean, I think the classic example is like, we need more students for the marching band. Okay, that's like kind of a simple one. Um, like on a larger scale, it could be a state institution that says we want to increase enrollment from out of state students. It might be we need more and more students in the humanities. So we need to like try to recruit and admit more students in the humanities. So it's these sort of priorities that that are really only known internally. That there's no real way to position yourself with, but that does help to explain the things that I hear all the time. I'm sure you do, Julie, as well, which is to say, like, well, I'm just as good as a student as that other student. They got in and I didn't. Well, if you're in the humanities and you're a marching band student and you're from out of state, that made a difference. You know, those are three factors that school was looking at, and that made you nothing like that other student. Um, so that's where you can have like two students with the same GPA get completely different admissions decisions because of how they might match with particular institutional priorities from year to year. And those priorities can change depending on what round you're applying in. There's a lot to think about there. So that's a larger way to say that when we're reading an application, right, we're evaluating the students' accomplishments and their merit, we're comparing them against entire pool of applications in light of what the school's institutional priorities are for that particular admissions round in that particular applicant cycle.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm going to ask a couple of rapid fire questions, just some quick answers, and then we
Great.
do have a few questions that I'll bring to you.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, maybe I'll ask a final question too. All right, so a few rapid fire questions. In what order do you read the applications? As they come in, or
Yeah.
yeah,
At some schools, it might be they read on in order that the applications are received as they're processing. They're just reading them. Um, that is, you know, at some schools there might be incentive there. They might be enrolling as they read. They might be admitting as they read. So you might hear some schools that say like we're rolling admission. So there really is an advantage to getting your application in early. At other schools, they're going to say, "Oh gosh, we read by state or by alphabetical order by the student's last name." So, or we don't start reading until all the applications are in. So it really doesn't matter. There's a million different answers to that question. The only way it would really be to your advantage is if that school was rolling admissions and they're sending out acceptances as they read and they might run out. Those are kind of few and far between these days, but it's good to know if one of your schools does practice rolling admission, then you certainly would want to send in your application sooner rather than later.
great, great. Okay, and the next question is, how many applications do you or your colleagues do you read in a day, and maybe do you read in the whole year,
Yeah.
the cycle?
So it's a good question. I think often at many schools there might be more than one person who reads an application, and there's a little bit more work if you're the first person than if the second person. Um, a typical day for me, if I'm only going to do first read, so I'm only going to be the first person reading an application, like an average day for me would be about maybe 35 applications. That would be like a good solid, you know, tail and hard hat kind of day. Um, 45 or 50 would be a day where I pounded away all day. And, a more casual day would be in the 20-ish range. Now we have a pretty intensive process to our reads. Other schools where the notes that they're taking are much more efficient and maybe shorter. They might be looking at, between 50 and 75 a day on like a pretty average day. By the end of the year, between applications I was the first reader on and then applications I was the second reader on, um, my number will probably start with a 2, and it will not be in the hundreds.
Yep, yep.
But the more you do, the better you get at it, frankly. And, there's always a little rust to shake off at the beginning of the year. And this does the application reading process at the school I work at many other schools, it starts in mid-October and doesn't finish until early March, and it's takes up a good part of most days.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I'm going to just move. We do have three or four questions. Let me quickly ask. Someone just asked if a student had a suspension during high school, uh, how is that looked at during the review process?
If I just blow that up a little bit bigger to say like behavior and conduct,
Hmm.
um, it can factor into the application. It's a part of how the school is getting to know the student's character. I will say that there's two things to evaluate, right? There is the infraction, and then there's the explanation. Those are two separate things. And often the smallest infraction with the worst, whiniest explanation can be much worse than a pretty serious infraction with an explanation that really takes ownership and contrition and humility.
Good. And a question about does each school's college data set include the number of accepted students who submitted SAT scores? I guess as
Good
far as understanding
question.
that.
I
Yeah.
don't know the answer. Understand also that that data set depends on when your student's applying, would be a year or two behind. Um, it's a pretty, if you all you really need to have an understanding there though is of the of the handful or more probably schools you're applying to, and it's a pretty easy question to ask over email to an admissions office. You could probably very quickly get that question from answered in 10 emails to 10 different schools in 24 hours.
Yeah. And someone asked, is it beneficial to reach out to an assigned admission counselor their junior year to build a relationship?
At some schools it may be, and at some schools it may not be, but even when it's not, why not?
Hmm.
Um, and I think you'll get a pretty good read back from the school about whether or not they really want to kind of establish a relationship. Um, if you send an email to your assigned counselor, you say, "Hi, my name's Julie. I'm a current high school junior. I go to Lexington High School. I'm really interested in your college, and I'm hoping to visit this summer." If that school really, really values that relationship, that counselor will respond and say, "So nice to meet you, Julie. Please let me know what day you'll be visiting because I'd love to meet you with you when you're here. And if you have any particular academic interest, let me know in advance and I'll try to set up a conversation with the faculty member."
Yeah.
If that relationship is not a big deal, they'll reply and say, "Great, thanks for the email, Julie."
Yeah. That's good. You'll learn a lot. Well, I guess we didn't really talk about this, and there is a question. Can you just say a word about any acceptance advantage to applying early decision?
It depends upon the school, but there very well likely might be a difference in the acceptance rates between early decision and regular decision at a particular school. And that difference might be that the acceptance rate is much higher. Now, granted, the pool tends to be much smaller in early decision versus regular decision. There tends to be a lot more spaces available. Um, but that's a great question to ask of a particular school. And schools tend to be pretty honest with their answer to say, yes, there's an advantage. Yes, there's an advantage for housing if you apply ED, or yes, there's an advantage for merit scholarships, or yes, there's just an admissions advantage, or no, there's no advantage at all. Depends upon the school, but more often than not, the answer is yes.
You want to say a word about athletics factoring into the admissions decision?
Um, that kind of depends upon the level. At many schools, the recruitment process has happened well before the application has ever been submitted. And sometimes academics may have already been evaluated if a coach had identified um, a potential applicant as an athletic contributor. And so at many schools, the final step is the application. And at some other schools, maybe at a lower level school, that may play a role in the application, but more often than not, the athletic evaluation would have happened well before the application was submitted.
Great. And then there is a person who's kind of giving you a little dig. That essay you printed out, is that you're saying that's not going to make a difference for that student?
Um, that's that student is not going to be offered a spot, actually.
Okay. Yep. So
It was a
what you
great
said
essay.
earlier. Yep.
Yeah, it was a great essay. I loved it, but they're actually not an academic match
Yep.
um, at our school.
Couple more, and then I will just ask my final question. But this is a good one because we're hearing a lot about this, and I will share that I believe we covered this. This is a three-part series that I have been doing with Drew. So go back and listen to the other ones as well. And I think we covered this, but probably worth covering again. How are you vetting the use of AI in application writing?
Um, it is. I got another. I might pull out another metaphor for you, Julie. I don't know if I've used this one on you before. Right? Have I done the car engine one with you before?
I forget.
Okay. All right. You're good. You're good. Good. You're
That's
good.
good.
Good at pretending. All right. So if this is better when we're in person, but on the table in front of us, if I put a Volvo engine and a Honda engine with no labels, would you be able to tell the difference? I wouldn't.
No.
You know who could tell the difference? The Volvo repair person. Because all they do every day is work on Volvo engines. And if at some point they were presented with the Volvo engine and somebody stuck a bunch of Honda parts in there, it would stick out like a sore thumb to them, but to you and I, not at all. Here we come, full circle. We are Volvo repair people.
Hmm.
The only thing we read is 650 words written by high school seniors, um, are given the prompts that they are provided. That's all we read. We don't read poetry. We don't read ninth graders' book reports. We only read this. AI is skilled at writing. It is not skilled at capturing an authentic voice of a high school senior. It is also not skilled at personal writing, at sort of real, um, sort of like revelatory personal writing. And because of that, um, do we always are we always able to recognize it? Probably not. But the times where we're not able to recognize, we just think that essay is kind of flat and kind of boring.
Hmm. All right. All right. I guess I'm going to ask my last question of you, which is just what do you wish applicants knew before they hit submit? A couple of points there that you might want to share.
Um, okay. I think I've got a few. Number one, I've got to keep them quick. Number one, um, the person on the other end really cares. Like, we do this job because we want to admit. And when we open the application, we are looking for reasons to admit. We're not looking, we don't open it and just go um, excitedly seeking that misplaced comma or that lower grade in a subject area. We look for reasons to admit. Your audience is someone who likes kids and wants to find opportunities to offer opportunities to bring those kids to their employer's campus, right? To their college or university. That's number one. Number two, I wish what students knew is that there are parts of the application that they can control. And those parts have a great ability to swing momentum. The mindset that students approach their essay with, the effort that they put in the classroom during their, junior spring or senior fall, they're, towards the end of their career, and then how they've kind of thoughtfully engaged in the college search application process. Those things really can create momentum, and momentum works both ways. So I really try to encourage students to focus on the parts of the application process that they control, because as a reader, it really sticks out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So I just want to thank you so much, Drew, for all this honest conversation, and thank all of you who wrote in terrific questions. And I will give another plug that Uh, in this three-part series, the first part, Drew and I talked about how do you begin this process? How do you just start? Uh, and a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how colleges know your high school and really understand the context around that. And then we have this, of course, which is being recorded. I will send the recording to you tomorrow, so you can share that with others who weren't able to hear this. And again, come back often to the MEFA website and see all of the other resources that we have for you to help. And Drew, cannot thank you enough.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie. Thanks,
All
everybody.
all right, have a great night.